Hi folks, this is Tristan from NoiseGate, here with the first in a series of KORG Wavestate tutorial videos. So in each of these videos we're going to focus on a specific aspect of the KORG Wavestate and try to break it down into a nice bite-sized digestible portion for your enjoyment. So as we scroll through some of these performance presets, you'll notice that they sound very dynamic and very vibrant and often very animated. And there's several reasons for this. One is we have many gigabytes of samples to work with, but we also have this cool vector synthesis here, which lets us drastically modify the sound without changing presets. And finally we have wave sequencing, which lets us add a lot of movement to our sound, as in with this patch. Okay, so the first couple of videos we're going to focus on building sounds using these different synthesis methods. We're going to start with wave sequencing. So when most people think of a sequencer, they think of a device we hook up to a synthesizer, program in a melody, hit play, we'll hear that synthesizer playing that melody. In that case, the sequencer is controlling the pitch of the synthesizer, so you can think of the sequencer as being a pitch sequencer. With the Wavestate, however, pitch is just one of the many parameters we can sequence. All these different parameters are laid out on their own sequencer lane. So we have timing, sample, pitch, shape, gate, etc. When we choose a sequencer lane, the black buttons across the front become our different sequencer steps. So we have 4 banks of 16 steps, so up to 64 steps per sequencer lane. So each of these sequencer lanes can behave quite differently from one another, so you can come up with very complex, interesting sounds. That all sounds like a lot to take in, so let's break it just down to basics. I'm going to call up the initialized performance preset, which is just this simple sound. So it's just blending between a sine wave and a sawtooth wave. If we press the performance button, we get an overview of the whole performance and the sequencer, and we can see there's some activity happening on the sample sequencer lane. If we select that sequencer lane, we can see it on the sequencer steps here. Okay, this is a very basic 2-step sequence. Step 1, the sample lane is telling the program to play a sine wave. On step 2, it tells it to play a sawtooth wave. So we're just alternating between those 2 sounds. To make the sound more interesting, we can add some extra steps to the sequencer lane by holding down Shift and pressing page right to get to the utility view. And you can see here we have action, add steps to and, number of steps to add. We'll say 2, then press enter. That's going to turn this 2-step sequence into a 4-step sequence. So now we have 4 wave sequences sample steps to choose from. Let's throw a different sample into step number 3. You can see the huge list of samples we have to choose from. We can actually hold down Shift and press right to get to our category selection. So let's choose something very different. How about brass ensemble? Add some trombones. Actually, I have to extend the sequencer to hear that sound. That sounds cool. Let's go to our 4th step and add a different sample. How about this piano effect sound? Okay. So we're getting into something interesting here. One other thing you'll notice is that the samples are crossfading from one to another. That is courtesy of the timing sequencer lane, which affects how we transition from step to step. We can choose how long it takes to move from step to step, but we can also add crossfades. As you can see, there's a 0.8 second crossfade happening now. We can take that down to say 0.2 seconds to have a shorter crossfade between samples. We can also speed up the length of each step by reducing the duration. Let's take it down to half a second, for example, and we're effectively increasing the speed of the sequencer. We could alternatively tell the timing lane to conform to the tempo, in which case the duration would be subdivision values instead of seconds. Okay, but that's getting a bit interesting. Let's move on to pitch. So pitch is where we'll program in a melody, for example. So let's increase the length of the pitch sequencer lane by adding 7 steps onto the end. That'll turn the pitch sequencer lane into an 8-step sequence, as we can see on the overview here. Let's tell it to loop all 8 steps. And now we just have to step through step by step and tell it how far each step should transpose from the initial note we play. I'm just going to add some random numbers. So that's getting at least mildly interesting. The other parameters we have to choose from are shape and gate. Shape adds a contour to each step, so we can actually change how each step behaves. In order for it to work, we have to go through another wave sequencer lane and tell it to utilize shape. So if we go to the pitch lane, tell it to use shape, then the shape lane will affect it. Now, instead of going through and choosing how each step behaves, we actually have presets per lane as well. Let's choose a shape lane preset. Let's try this one. Okay, so you can hear how the shape lane is affecting the way the pitch behaves. It's adding these pitch bends all the time. Let's go to the gate sequencer lane and call up a gate lane preset as well. That's affecting how long each step is. Okay, so that's getting pretty interesting now. You can see how you can manually define each step along the way, or there are all these different presets to help you get from A to B a bit more quickly. So this has just been a quick overview of the wave sequencing capabilities of the Wavestate. Stay tuned for number 2, where we'll dive into vector synthesis.